Testing. Okay, cool. I'm going.
Okay. Do you smile for the camera first?
I mean, if you're going to use the video footage, but it's up to
sure.
you.
They told me that. No, that's what they say. Always smile for the camera first. Like,
okay.
So it's so awkward. Anyway. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What You're Craving, Molly here. I am just really excited today. I have Victoria Garrick on the show. I'm delighted by her. And I was just talking to her for only 5 minutes. But, when you do the research, you really feel like you get to know people, and then you get to have a podcast and you get to talk to them. It's a fabulous thing having a podcast. It really is. But let me tell you about her if you don't know about her. She's a former Division I volleyball player, TED Talk speaker, which I want to talk about to no end. A mental health advocate, to which I want to talk about at no end. And she was a 4-year starter at USC, where she won a Pac-12 championship and finished her career with the top 5 most digs in program history. Victoria first began sharing her story of how she battled and overcame depression and anxiety in her 2017 TED Talk, The Hidden Opponent. I just need to pause and say, everybody should watch that. Okay, I'm not going to get into the conversation, but I have a thought. So it's been viewed over 370,000 times. And Victoria's been featured in the Players Tribune, People Magazine, USA Today. And she's amassed over 1 million followers on all of her social media platforms, where she's known for her positive media campaign, #RealPost. She brings this campaign to life weekly on her podcast, Real Pod, which is also really great. And she's interviewed some of the greatest athletes and psychologists in the world. And she's the founder of the mental health nonprofit, The Hidden Opponent. And she tours the country as a public speaker and advocate, sharing her story in the hopes of raising awareness and destigmatizing the conversation around mental health. Count me in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi.
Thanks, Molly. Super excited to be here. And oh my gosh, I always get like imposter syndrome when I hear, do you ever feel that way? Like when someone reads your resume or your credentials and you're like,
literally every minute. Literally every minute. It's really like that idea that you just don't listen to your first thought, because I'm always like, wait, do I have anything? I thought about this podcast today. I was like, what are we going to talk about? But now I'm like,
oh my God, that's funny because, and you're coming on my show afterwards. But it's funny. I thought the same thing, but then with people like you, I mean, we talk about such similar things and we've had such similar experiences that I always remind myself, I'm like, I don't have to prep for this. I'm like, we could go get a lunch and we would have a fantastic conversation.
1,000%. It's such a fun, I think that happens in imposter syndrome. Maybe the worst part of imposter syndrome is the pain it causes the other person. Like, we forget that other people are like wonderful, interesting, kind, warm beings. Like,
right.
What do I have to say? It's such an insult, right? It's such an insult to you.
And if they're coming on a podcast, they're coming to talk and carry a conversation,
Or like, it's not like you're going to be like a bitchy mental health advocate, like a bitchy judgmental. I hope not,
Oh gosh. Well, that's the other thing about this space that I love is when it's in mental health, I feel like people are extra forgiving.
Yeah.
And I never feel like I have to lie. If someone reaches out about an interview and I'm just like, I'm not doing interviews for the month. I'm burnt out. I don't have the energy. I feel like most of the time they're super understanding and nice about it because that's this environment. I couldn't imagine being in maybe a more corporate setting where mental health is not a part of the conversation. And so you can't say you're anxious or you're burnt out.
Well, you're such a dynamo. And I was like, I'm so excited just to know you. And I can't wait to watch what happens to you. Like, wow. This TED Talk that you did in 2017, I have so many thoughts about it. My first thought about it, because of course I want to talk about athletes and mental health, but I've never been a Division I athlete, and I identified with every word you said in every single word you said in that. And my first question is, how you were pretty young when you sophomore in college when you did that.
Yes, I was a sophomore. It was my spring, and I'll never forget. It was in April. My birthday's on the 30th, and I was turning 20. So I delivered that talk at 19. And I remember being kind of hyped. I was like, cool. I can always look back and say I was a teenager with like 2 more weeks left.
Yeah, what a way to bring in the 20s. How did you decide? Like, how did you put that thing together? It's so powerful. It addresses so many things that I have so many thoughts, and I really have a lot of thoughts and questions for you about it. But how did you even think to put that together?
Yeah, the process is a wild story. And Molly, as I'm sure you can tell, I'm a talker. So just
Me
cut me off if
too.
you're like, girl, we
You know
we
what I'm
get it.
just
We want
thinking?
to
I'm
move
just having
on.
this quick thought. Like I'm always thinking about myself as a listener, and they're like, well, what is it? What's the podcast? What's it about? So anyway, I'll tell you what I think it's about. And then you tell, I'm like, so Victoria gives this TED talk on athletes and mental health and how unbelievably ignored, I would say, overscheduling, busyness, perfectionism, mental health being not looked at all like physical injury. I mean, what you address in this podcast at 19 years old, and by the way, using personal story, it's so powerful. Again, I'm like 43 years old, I do yoga. Just kidding. I have a lot of exercise, believe me, in my story. We can talk about it. But it was so powerful. I guess I'm so curious, like not necessarily how it came together, but how did you get so brave to go do that?
There were a lot of factors that contributed to the TED Talk and things that honestly fell into place. So I guess if I'm looking at it from a few different places, I had been silently suffering
Mm.
with anxiety, depression, and also a binge eating disorder, which I didn't even disclose in the TED Talk because I was too ashamed. And
Mm.
it's funny looking back on it, like, oh, I got up there and I told this really dark story about a bike ride I had where I was thinking about getting hit by a car, but I couldn't admit the binging I was doing at night because
Ain't,
that was too vulnerable.
ain't
And
that a
so,
kick in the head?
and I'm
Yeah.
sure you relate to just that shame around food. And so it's even interesting for me to look back at the time because while I was ready to tell my story, there were things that I withheld, food and body image being one of them. But I suffered with my own mental health challenges for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then once I started going to therapy, I started getting the help. I started realizing there were ways to regulate my emotions and to work through my triggers and to overcome my anxiety and to like I realized, why is this so stigmatized? Why is no one talking about this? Why did it take me 2 years and getting to basically rock bottom before I realized I could get help? I didn't have to be ashamed, and there were answers to this. And so and I had just started healing. Something I always remind people is that TED Talk is not me being like, oh, hi, I went through these things and now I'm happy and let's talk about it. It's me being like, hi, I'm currently on
Yeah.
Lexapro, like given to me a few months ago. I'm in the thick of it now, but I'm so furious by the stigma that I need to talk about this. So there was that. There
I
was
also want
also,
to say, I'm not so interested in anybody who says they're fully healed and they don't struggle. I'm not interested. I don't believe it. That's why I just don't, I think that's toxic positivity. Like I've been in remission from an eating disorder for 12 years, but it's not like, rainbows and unicorns every day with that particular diagnosis.
uh, yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. Curious, what are your thoughts on someone who's just not willing to continue learning? Like, I think I'm
Yeah.
turned off by someone who's like, oh, I have nothing to learn and no room to grow. I'm like,
Yeah.
everyone does.
Yeah. If we start a club, these would be the reasons you can't come into our club, right? Pretending like you're okay all the time and having a really closed mindset. Okay. Well, let's just add to the list as we communicate today.
The thing I would say though is some of those people most of the time are just like in extreme denial,
I
right?
know.
They don't even want to admit, sometimes it's not even their fault.
Oh my
And I think
gosh.
through all
No
my mental
way.
health issues, I've realized compassion because I didn't have that before. Kind of, obviously I was always a nice person, but I really only thought of my feelings and the feelings of people I cared about. I
Mm,
wasn't so in tune with people in completely different situations as me.
totally.
And I think when you can have that unlock in your mind, you can connect with the world on a different level because I might never be able to understand the issues that some other people are facing. But I can understand that I don't understand. And that's something people aren't willing to admit.
Oh, totally. And yet, I think we always have to remember that denial is a protective mechanism. Like it's not someone's fault that they're not ready to deal with something, right? It's like we think we're protecting ourselves from the truth, I guess. And oh my gosh, I totally, and I don't know, I always believe we're ready when we're ready. We don't get to necessarily always decide that.
Yeah.
So when you had this rock bottom moment, like what happened? Like, and like, how did you get into therapy? And how was that like, was it an easy process for you?
So similar to the denial, that's kind of the state I was in my entire freshman year of school. I didn't know what was going on with me, like why I was so anxious, why I had no confidence, why I couldn't go to sleep at night and I was crying in the locker room before games, why I was coping with all this food. I didn't know what was going on and I didn't want to believe something was going on because I looked around at everyone else who seemed to have life figured out. And even girls on my team, we had the national player of the year. I mean, she's the national player of the year. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm scared about the game. Like they're going to kick me off the team, so it was even more scary for me to admit that anything was wrong because I didn't want to be the oddball out. I didn't want to lose my spot. And it didn't make sense. And I think that people feel that a lot of times is, hey, I have a best friend who loves me. I have a mom or I have a dad or I have the job that I want or the thing that I want. Why am I unhappy?
Well, that
And so
comparative suffering's a killer,
yeah, the pieces didn't add up either. So that all contributed to me kind of denying what was going on. And in terms of rock bottom, that was just, it felt like a complete loss of self. I mean, the bubbly, energetic, talkative person that I am today, she was not there. I had no idea where she went. Like I was so negative. I hated everything. All I did was want to cry. And I think that's really what shook me into seeking help was, okay, I've tried to do this on my own for a while now. I'm only getting worse. And then when those like suicidal ideation thoughts come in, that's when I'm scared of myself. And I'm thinking, whoa, we're really off the path here. I think it is time to raise the white flag. And I thought that's what it was, right? I thought it was this surrender. I couldn't figure it out. I lost. Having gone to therapy, I realized it is not at all losing. In fact, it takes so much strength to say, hey, can I have directions? It takes more strength sometimes to hold back than it does to push. And that's kind of, when I hit rock bottom and what led me to reach out.
Who did you ask for help? I agree with you. I think asking for help is because addiction, depression, all of it, it's like, it just isolates you. That's what it does. Right. And so then you're in this life the size of a postage stamp thinking nobody can help you. Something's wrong with me. I'm never going to feel better. All the lies that these diseases tell us. But who did you ask for help? And like, how did you get there? I think that everybody needs to know this.
The first person I opened up to about my anxiety and depression was a teammate. And I just kind of was fishing around to see if she felt the same way or if I was making any sense. And so I kind of opened up to her like, hey, this is really hard. Like, do you ever struggle? And through talking, I found out that she saw a psychologist at the health center. And that was mind blowing for me. I had no idea. I mean, I approached this conversation wondering if she would even understand. And she tells me I have a therapist and you can see one for free. And so that was the big light bulb of, whoa, someone else feels this way. And there's somewhere I can go on campus, which is an awesome privilege that I wish every school had. And then for my eating disorder and my body image issues, I opened up to my mom first. And I think, I just remember, there's so many stories.
I guess it's like, did you feel like when you opened up to your mom, you'd already been in therapy?
Yes.
So you sort of knew like, oh, okay,
issues.
like I'm not so alone. So then like that other, like the next layer of healing came up, right? The eating stuff.
Yeah, but I don't know why the binge eating felt so much more shameful than the anxiety and depression. Like it just felt, I feel like my whole younger life as a middle school and teenager, I cared a lot about aesthetic. I had counted calories in high school. I had seen a dietitian. My mom had helped me lose weight a few times. I just, that was kind of a part of my identity was like the way I ate and the way I kept my body up. And so
Well,
for me
diet
to admit
culture
I had a
got you
problem.
early, girl. I mean, of
What?
course you thought it was moral. Diet culture got you early. If you're counting calories at 13, it's
Counting
different.
calories, drinking Slim Quick shakes at 13. I mean, it was bad.
Hmm.
And I was just gonna say, oh, the other thing was my eating disorder, for lack of a better term, wasn't glamorous. It's not like I'm losing all this weight and I don't eat anything, which in a weird way is praised in our society. It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
oh no, I'm eating thousands of calories. And that's where we think of gluttony. We think of, guys eat that much. There was so much also tied to the way I was abusing food that I
Yeah.
felt ashamed about.
Well, it feels so moral, doesn't it? I mean, I can think of that. Like, I think I really, I don't even know why, I guess, and I often do, but I think I would way rather cop to feeling depressed or anxious, even though there's such a stigma attached to that. I think some people can say, okay, I felt sad too. But if you're like, yeah, so I'm going into the garbage when I swore I wouldn't eat more of the cake and I'm going to eat that, like that can feel really moral. It's why there's so much about that TED talk that I love, because you were like, you were just home running things that people think. And you know what like, I just know,
Yeah.
like,
I
yeah,
mean, speaking of the eating out of the trash can or whatever it is, the word that comes to mind is powerless.
yes.
And when you feel like you don't even have control over yourself, I mean, it's like you black out. I mean, you can't stop yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that's scary, is you don't have control and you're almost afraid of what you'll do next.
Yeah. And you have a diet culture telling you, I mean, there's certainly stigma against mental health, right? But we've all felt sad. But when you have a diet culture, $1 billion diet culture saying to you, ew, what's wrong with you? Like, it's a bit different, like literally, like you should be able to hold control.
Right. Which is a total scheme.
I mean, this is the greatest con that exists, I'll tell you that. And I love this line in the TED talk that, like, I battled depression for half a year without even knowing what it was. How good is that? That you said that, by the way,
Oh my
while we're
gosh.
here.
Thank you.
But the thing I also wanted to talk to you about. So you open this TED talk by showing us your schedule. So this is why I think that it's 19, it's 29, it's 39. You guys, it's so amazing. It's like cry, class, workout, and you're telling us the story. And I used to have like the biggest work addiction that exists. Like, I got so high off of work. It's like, can you talk me through what it felt like as a student athlete, like trying to get it, trying to be everything to everyone and living that double life of being like up and awake and being on the field, and then like so depressed and miserable and scared.
It's definitely haunting to think of, for sure. And I even have glimpses sometimes in my current life where I remember like a feeling. And it's interesting because I'll get triggered by having so much in my schedule or not having a break, because of that lifestyle. And
Can you say more about
it's,
that? Can you explain that to us? Like, why that
yeah.
triggers you today? What
So
happened?
I had a practice block from 1 to 6, 6 days a week.
Mm.
So from 1 to 6, you are in the gym and it's whatever the coaching staff wants you to do. Maybe that's 2.5 to 3 hours of volleyball practice. That's an hour of a lift. That's stretching. Of course, like a lot of time in there is getting dressed, showering, whatnot, but you're in that facility from 1 to 6. And that's just volleyball, and that's just practice. Then there are games, 2 games a week that are either in state or out of state. So you're flying. I have a normal class load of 18 units that all the other students take as well. And then there's, keeping up with school. There's sometimes mandatory tutoring because you're an athlete and they know there's a lot going on. They book you extra tutoring sessions that you can't get out of unless you pass out of them or you're a good student, which fortunately I was, so I could drop some of those hours. You have homework, there's time to eat,
Oh my God.
there's barely a social life. And it's a lot. And look, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining.
Oh,
I
you know what I'm actually thinking right now, that I have friends who have full-time jobs and children. It's like, it's the same thing. This story goes across the ages. You know what I mean? And just in terms of the eating stuff, like, yeah, of course we're going to binge eat and try and nourish and nurture ourselves. Like, I'm so tired. I'm like literally like, oh my God, can she stop
Yeah.
talking? Like,
I
not
think
that
the
way, but you know what I mean?
Right. I think the biggest thing is like if I went back to do that now, knowing what I know at my current maturity level with the insight and the therapy and the things I've had, I think I would be successful. When you take an 18-year-old or you take an adult who's never worked on themselves or learned time management or understood their boundaries, it's a recipe for a disaster, and you're going to be at a higher risk of something like anxiety. And so that's why I'm so passionate about kind of talking about it now is, yes, in a perfect world, I would love if there were less hourly requirements and student athletes could have more than one day off a week, which most of the time that day is not even off. There's an illegal practice or something happening.
Wow.
Just 24 hours off is hard to get. And so I don't think that athletes cannot handle it. I just think what we need the proper resources and support and training to get through it. And
Wait, you
that,
think that athletes can handle that kind of schedule without any break or any time to nourish or nurture or get joy? I don't agree. I don't know. I'm not an athlete, but that
yeah,
seems
yeah, I mean,
aggressive. No,
I
but like,
guess,
what's it worth? What's the point?
well, there are the payoffs of being successful in your sport and that feeling you get in games, and you've worked your whole life to play at this level. I mean, it's not like every practice is miserable. Some are really exciting and you're having a breakthrough and you're playing at a high level. So it's not like the things you're doing have to suck, but if you have the wrong mental approach or you're not allowed that mental health day or that break, yes,
I love
I
that
don't think
distinction
athletes can
though.
do it, but
Yeah. I love that distinction. You said
we
in
don't
the
always get the choice.
right. And you said in the TED Talk, you said I was weak for wanting a break. I mean, because I think that's what I would do differently. If I had to have that kind of schedule, I'd be very clear, like, well, I need a break. I mean, it's how my schedule is today. I'm like, well, I need to meditate here and I need to take care of this here. I mean, I don't know. What does your schedule look like now? How do you take care of yourself?
My schedule now is it's tough because I don't have a day that looks the same, just being self-employed with a variety of business endeavors and things I'm involved in. I would say I try to group my days so that I at least can mentally prepare. So Thursdays, I usually podcast like today. Wednesdays are usually like Zooms, meetings, phone calls, emails. Like that day I'm by my computer. So if someone wants to do a phone call, we usually book them on Wednesdays. Tuesdays, I'm filming like TikToks and the things I want to film. Mondays and Fridays are a bit more, I like to have less booked on those days because if I'm filming on Tuesday, I like to prepare what I'm filming and write that out. Sometimes things come up.
Right.
So I've been starting to batch and compartmentalize my work days, which has helped. The other thing I'll say for any entrepreneurs listening is I recently realized I don't have to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, like the rest of the world. I think because you're self-employed, you tell yourself, oh, well, I have to work, these days. But for me, I don't get Saturday and Sunday off. Like I can't not post on the weekend and not create content on the weekend. So as a result, if I'm keeping up with the Monday through Friday grind of the world, just to say that I am, and I'm working on Saturday and Sunday, when am I resting? And so recently I've started to take days off during the week, like Monday, a half day. I'll take a Tuesday off because I know I'm filming or I have things on Saturday and Sunday.
I
So
love
that's been
that.
an adjustment too.
But I think that's what you're saying here, which is we can get it all done, but we have to be a little bit more thoughtful. I'm not even sure that I can get it all done. I love Thich Nhat Hanh. I think is the Buddhist. He says, you can take vacations, just opening the door sometimes. Like we can really like take little rests and things like that. But what do you think is the difference between working hard and pushing yourself off a limit? Like, how would we measure that? How do we measure
Right.
that?
I love this question because I have an answer and I've thought long and hard about this. There's a difference between mental health and mental toughness, and that line is often very blurry. We think mental health is mental toughness and vice versa. but there's a difference. And mental health or mental wellness is your overall state of being, your state of mind. Similar to physical health. Is someone physically healthy? Are they able, right? So I'm not talking about how strong they are, but could they be strong? Are they just well physically? Are you well mentally? That's mental health. Then your mental toughness is actually a skill that can be trained with repetition. It's your ability to work past adversity, to overcome challenges. You can become more mentally tough over time, putting yourself in tough situations. Now, how do they relate? If you're talking about peak performance, being the best we can be, if I want to be the best volleyball player, if someone wants to be the best professor, whatever it is, how do you sustain peak performance? Well, you have that base of solid mental health, and then that mental toughness is the bridge between the two. So you can tell I've like really thought about this.
It's
So,
so fabulous.
and what I've learned, and I learned this,
I'm like on every word. I'm like, tell
I
me
do
more.
have to give some credit here to Dr. Michael Gervais, who's an incredible high performance psychologist who I study his work all the time. And basically,
What's your
when
favorite book that he writes? I feel like I would get my pen out if I was listening.
he
Michael, let's do it
actually
slower.
has
Michael Gervais. How do we spell his
yes,
last name?
Gervais. He
Okay.
works with the most incredible high performers in the world. He has a podcast actually called Finding Mastery, which is
There we go.
phenomenal, that everyone should check out. So, and he's mastered this work. So basically, if we look at someone who needs to push or work hard, I think everyone has to have that understanding of, okay, do I have 30 more minutes in me? Can I go one more? Or am I pushing in my mental well-being area, or is this my mental toughness? And I think that's trial and error. I think I've had days where I thought I had more in me, and you know what, I didn't. I live and I learn. And then I've had times where I've had to accept my tank is at E. I need to go home and I need to sleep, and we'll pick this up tomorrow. So I think everyone needs to understand that, but especially when we talk about coaches or we talk about authoritative figures who are in charge of athletes, high performers, they have to understand as well when it is okay and pushing should be encouraged, or when it is too far.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny because in my TED Talk, I talked about this. I said, what's the difference between, pushing through a workout or pushing through your life? And it's been, I don't know, 4 years now. And I feel like I understand that. And one of my favorite quotes is, sometimes it takes more strength to hold back than it does to push. We live in a society where people are like, yeah, you went one more, you didn't sleep for 3 days, or you just kept going. Why are we praising that? I would much rather clap for someone who said, oh, I got tired and I took a nap. I'm like, good for you, because that's hard.
Self-care. Yeah.
That's hard to admit, to stop,
So wait, so in the spirit of our podcast today, I did this Google search. Okay. And I Google searched the top 3 fitness slogans. Okay. You ready for them?
Gosh. Oh,
I know.
gosh.
Do you want to take a breath? You want to take a cleansing breath? Everyone needs a tune-up. Don't stop till you drop. Okay, I'm going to do it. Turn fat into fit.
Gosh.
I know. What do we do?
Yeah.
So really, we're in a good space to help people. I mean, so what do you do about this? I mean, as an athlete and as someone who, knows a lot about working out and taking care of their body, personally, I have a pitcher's injury in my arm that only pitchers get from bulimic exercise from my eating disorder. And I've had to really reevaluate my relationship with exercise. And it's been a beautiful path, to be honest with you. And it's almost parallel to what we're talking about here. But what about this whole grinding culture of working out and working? And yeah, you're right. 7 days a week posting. What do you think about all this?
We have to unlearn and we have to reteach. And sports culture especially has,
and I think workout culture too, right?
yeah,
I think they're so
workout
similar,
culture,
right?
diet culture. I mean,
Diet
all these
culture,
things,
all the cultures,
all
yeah.
the cultures are horrible. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But all the cultures have been kind of built on things that are not sustainable, things that don't result in the actual thing that the person wants. And they're mostly made to profit, right?
Yeah.
And I think everyone hopefully can have that moment in their life where they realize their worth, but also what makes them happy. And if we look at like body image, I used to think unless I had a six pack and a certain body fat percentage, then I wasn't an elite athlete. I mean, I remember going to USC and being like, I played Division I at USC in LA. Like I should be cut. I should have a six pack. I should be this, that. I never got a six pack. I like never got whatever body fat percentage, but I was good at what I did. And I started to realize, hey, I can be good at what I do without looking a certain way in the mirror. And this idea that your appearance is correlated to athletic performance or health is wrong. And I had to accept that I could be incredibly strong, but maybe my body just will always carry a bit more fat on my stomach or on my legs. And then I have teammates who maybe look different than me, but aren't as fast as me, or vice versa.
And I think that, yeah, I just always think about the harm I caused my body. And every time I look at my body, I think you are so wonderful. Like I actually, when I became trained as a shaman, we did this stuff on body, and the shaman was like, your body is your best friend. And I was like, Stuart, excuse me over here. No, hard no on that, Stuart. And he was like, and he just went at me. It was amazing. He was like, listen, your body's like, of all the people here, like actually your body's never let you down. Like you may want to reevaluate this. And it really stuck for whatever reason. But, so when you're saying, so anyway, I love whenever anybody says that the answer to a question, especially a big, like, what do I do about my addiction to all work and busyness, that it's trial and error, because culturally we just have the hardest time with with trial and error, right? Because we take it so personally when we make errors, right? We're like, oh, I'm the worst person, forget it. And then, we go binge eat or whatever. So can you walk me through the self-forgiveness process, I would imagine, or whatever process you have when you say, oh, you know what, I thought like when you're saying like, oh, I thought I could work 12 hours today, and now I'm just too tired. And like, what do you do? Like, how do you practice
Yeah,
forgiveness?
I'll give you a great example, especially for this podcast, what you're craving. So I was at my parents' in quarantine, and I was staying there for like a few months, and my dad likes these White Castle burgers. He gets these frozen White Castle burgers. They're in the freezer for him. They're like his little snack every once in a while. I've never had one. Like the thought of it sounds gross to me. A White Castle frozen patty. I mean, I don't want that. But for some reason, I just got this urge that I really wanted the White Castle patties one night. And so I'm an intuitive eater. So I'm like, okay, my body is craving this patty. I want to make it. And so I made the patties. And usually I'm very in touch with myself. I am not afraid to bite into something and say, I don't like this, and give it to someone else, or save it for later, give it to my boyfriend, or, I do listen to my hunger cues all the time. This was a unique night because I bite into this first patty and I think, oh, this is not good. I'm like, this is not what I was imagining when I thought I was going to have sliders right now. But
Shocking.
I
Shocking
kept
that
eating
the
it.
frozen hamburgers didn't taste like sliders.
Yeah. But I kept eating it. And I kept eating it thinking, this is not good. Why am I still eating it? And so I ate like 3 of these White Castle sliders, even though after my first bite, I knew I didn't want them and they didn't feel good, and it wasn't satisfying for me. So I'm done, and my stomach feels gross. It feels the way it feels when you put something in your body that you don't like. And that's tough. I think the toughest part for me that I've had to work through is sitting with discomfort in your body and not letting yourself fall into the urge of doing something about it, whether that is purging, which fortunately I never fell into because I have a fear of throwing up. I did try like once and it was not pretty. And then, but for me, my coping was like, okay, I'm planning my workout tomorrow. I'm not eating tomorrow. Like I was game planning how I was going to make up for this the next day. So in this moment, I had to sit there and I had to take a deep breath and I had to say to myself, okay, we're here now. We ate the patties. They're inside of us. What did we learn? And I say to myself, okay, I learned that when I take a bite of something and I automatically decide I don't like it, doesn't feel good, that I should listen to that cue. I should listen to myself. And what are we going to do better next time? Well, next time when something like this happens, I'm going to remember this moment and the uncomfortability I felt and hopefully create a different situation for myself so I don't have to feel this way again.
Yeah.
And you know what, Vic? We're done. We asked ourselves what we could learn. We talked about what we're going to do better. And now this is the evening. I have some discomfort in my stomach, but we're not going to make drastic life changes. And so that's kind of an example of me slowly taking deep breaths, talking through with myself. And it sounds cheesy, but I'm really like, okay, what did we learn? And I sit there with myself,
Vic, I don't think it sounds cheesy at all. I think it is literally definitional self-compassion. And as we were talking about in the beginning, the only way we can be compassionate towards others is to have self-compassion. Like that is a two-way street. There's no one way about it. Like, I think that is so beautiful. Like, that's trust. That's self-trust, right? That's self-love, straight.
Yeah. And it takes time to get to a place where you're like, all right, well, we're here now and this sucks, but it is what it is. And I got to move on with my life and learn next time. And I learned that from sports too. You know, when you make a mistake or you lose a game, you can't go back and win the game. And it's just going to ruin your life if you're annoying and mean to everyone the whole evening because you lost. I mean, you lost and it's over. What did we learn? What can we do better? Move the F on.
But it sounds like, given as healthy as you seem, that I think this is something that really happens in binge eating disorder. And I think all addictions is that we don't take, so I talk about it like curiosity, compassion, corrective action plan. But I think when we make this corrective action plan, we have to follow through on it or else we mess with our self relationship. Right. And it actually sounds like how do you follow through? So when you say, next time, like, do you have any idea of how you follow through with that?
The biggest thing that comes to mind is the fact that I know I'm allowed to eat anything whenever I want it. Mm-hmm. And that's a comfort for me. That's a safety net, is I do not have to restrict in any way. And as someone who restricted my whole life, it is so triggering for me. Like if someone told me I couldn't eat apples, that would send me off. Totally. So for me to know, hey, I could have a White Castle patty whenever I want. And I did it and I learned that it doesn't feel good for me. So let's probably not make that choice next time. And I think with the intuitive eating too, when people hear eat whatever you want, whenever you want, they think that, the gates are open and you're going to just eat, foods that are not as nutritious for the rest of your life. And that's not the case. I love salads. I love vegetables. I love fruit. And knowing that I can have anything if I was craving it, and loosely, right? Like I can't have like a salmon for lunch today cooked with lemon oil if I wanted it, but I know that I'm not going to be taking anything away. That allows me the comfort of knowing I can move forward because this isn't like my last supper.
That makes sense. No, I mean, listen, I haven't had sugar or flour in 12 years because I believe more in an addictions model. But if you literally said to me right now, like, oh, Molly, you can't have cupcakes, I'd be like, well, it's over. I'm going to the store and getting cupcakes. Like, I think something
that fascinates me, even though they're not technically allowed with the no sugar.
Well, I wouldn't use the word allowed. It's all choice, right? I mean, no, I mean, I think that's what people get about. That's what when people think of the food addiction model, they think of this like draconian, like, you're not the boss of, nobody's the boss of me. I'm the boss of me.
So tell me if I'm right on this, because I actually think this is kind of my theory, is I think if you get to the pinnacle of intuitive eating, like if you get to the most enlightened state of intuitive eating practice, I believe,
literally sound like Buddhism, by the way.
No, literally. I believe though, if you get to that place, that you start making choices that are strictly for your body's nutrients. And of course there's some satisfaction and there's a taste element there, but like most of it is for the best thing that's going to be for your body. I'm not there yet. I still need to have Doritos and ice cream because I'm still like in that stage of my life. But I do think, and it sounds like that's kind of where you are, is it's not like you're not allowed to have sugar, but every day you wake up and you choose other things to fuel yourself.
1000%. But I think the other thing is that I needed to do it the opposite way. Like I would have killed myself if I was doing all the research later. And I'm not actually speaking in a fun way. I actually would have died because I was already 325 pounds, was deeply addicted to food. And so taking it out in the beginning to see, oh my God, that's the thing. Now to think about doing it, they're very similar. It's just like this is the toxic tribalism of diet culture. Like I would guarantee if you and I went out to lunch together, we would be far more the same than we are different. Right.
Yeah, well, I would also say you realize that with, I think you said sugar, and is there one other food
Flour,
that
they're the same
with sugar
chemically.
and flour in your life, you weren't happy and you didn't feel satisfied. You didn't feel like your best self. So that was a cue for you that you wanted to act differently in the future. Similar to me, like for me, it is White Castle burgers, or it is other foods that
1000%.
have been, not
But
the
I
best.
and I think there's another really beautiful, similarity to all successful, relationships with food, which is this forgiveness piece, which is saying like, because that's, I think, how it gets ingrained to like not happen again. It's choice. It's like, oh, I don't like that. Right. Or, and it's forgiveness. It's like, and you know what? Maybe I'll do it again and I'll still forgive myself for it. I mean, I think what the
Right.
toxicity of diet culture is, you're a bad person. And then it causes us to go harm ourselves more. And then we got to pull out of that shame. Like it's such a mess. We know that.
Right. And to talk more about this compassion and this trial and error, let's say the White Castle incident happens again, the same type of food, and I already did my work. And it happens again. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did this. I did the work. That happens. That happens. And I don't want anyone thinking that they should never make mistakes. I
No.
think when it happens again, you have that thought of, you know what? This is really hard for me. Me and my body have been through so much when it comes to food. I'm working so hard. It's not always going to be the way I want, and that's okay. I'm a human, and you just
Yeah.
show yourself some love in that moment.
Well, and I also think, in my experience in this, like sometimes the lesson happens again because there's actually like a deeper layer that you can get to in it, right? Like
Mhm.
I think of a lot of, I think where I am in my own recovery from eating disorder now, and how I make choices is so different than how I used to, right? It was a little bit like, hey, this doesn't work in my body and I'm not doing it. And then I think eventually down the road, I'm like, it's a little softer because of the lesson. Like everything's a little softer. And I think we can all get there. And by the way, I think this relates to all of this. I want to just ask one more question. I don't even know if this is a question, but I was so saddened and moved and overwhelmed by this poll that you did about people struggling. Can you just talk to us about it? And I don't know, I just feel like people need to know that everyone's struggling. So key us in.
Yeah, for sure. I was curious to know how many other athletes felt the same as me when I did that TED talk. And sadly, I could not find the information or the statistics I wanted online because, surprise, big corporations and organizations don't want to get that information, so they're not. So I was like, cool, I will make a survey monkey, and I will send it to 100 Division I athletes, because I have friends at Stanford and UCLA and Oregon and different teams, and we'll get answers. And, of course, I'm sure I didn't abide by the exact guidelines for this type of surveying. I mean, not that I did anything wrong, but like, I'm sure when you do surveys, there's certain
Right.
ways to phrase
Maybe it wasn't
questions,
so like
whatever.
scientifically, whatever, but
Yeah, but
yes,
all
it
I
was,
know is I asked some questions. Have
yeah,
you
you asked 100
experienced
people. Right.
symptoms? How do you feel? Yes, no, maybe, whatever. And I got the answers back. And the majority of athletes, and not even like 60-40, but like 90-10, 85, I'm so bad at math, 15, were all in favor of feeling similar to me. And I just wanted to include that so that people knew I'm not just one unique instance at this school. I'm not special. This is happening to hundreds of athletes everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I felt
The other
passionate about
one I was moved by, which I think is so accurate, is that over 50% of the people that she polled struggled with eating disorder. Isn't that right?
I can't confirm or deny. It's been a while since I
I
have
think
watched
it's
a
right.
TED talk, but I'm sure if you just saw it and wrote it down, that must be correct.
Yeah, I was just so moved by it. I mean, I think, and I think there's like a positive and a negative, right? Like that is so heartbreaking, and like we all suffer. And if you're suffering, talk about it. Like there's
Well,
so many places you can go. So tell us about this incredible nonprofit you started and what we can do to get involved in it.
yes, it's called The Hidden Opponent, titled after the TED Talk. And it is a community for student athletes to connect with one another, unite, work together for the same cause, but also amplify each other's voices and stories. So on our website, thehiddenopponent.com, or on Instagram at The Hidden Opponent, you can read these stories. You can hear from those people who were a part of the survey, from athletes now who are sharing what they're going through. And the whole point of the platform is to show that there are many of us and that we don't have to face this alone. And the reason that everything I do is so student athlete oriented is just because that was my experience. And in that experience, I felt like that group was looked over, for a variety of those reasons we talked about in sports culture, so that's why I chose to really focus it on those people. And of course, I believe and I support the mental health issues and the causes of all different groups of people, types of people that need that support. But this is a place where student athletes of all ages, former, current, can feel seen in their lifestyle and their struggles.
So what do you think we're all craving?
And just in life in general.
Yeah, the whole deal. What do you think we're really craving? That's what the podcast is about.
I think we're all craving acceptance.
Yeah. From ourselves and from others, right?
Probably mostly from others, which is the sad part, but
It's its own podcast.
Mhm.
You're amazing. If I wanted to know more about you, where would I find you?
You can check me out on Instagram at Victoria Garrick. And from there, I like to say you can find everything else. Just hit the link
Yeah.
in bio.
But if it were me, I would be, even before I went to her Instagram, I would just write The Hidden Opponent into your Google and watch that thing. It's a quick 20 minutes. It's really validating and heartwarming. And so are you. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much
much.
for coming on today. And yeah, love your face. Thank
Of
you.
course. Thank you, Molly.
Okay.